What is up, everybody? Let's get this show on the road. All right, everybody, this is the first episode of You Don't Know Jack with Jackson James. I don't know what I'm necessarily going to do with this, but if you're here and you're tuning in, make sure to hit up that chat as we transition into our full rundown on today's show. Let's take a look at the chalkboard. So today's topics are going to be some NBA Cup review. We're going to take a look about how the NBA's new in-season tournament went for the second time around, and then we're going to look at the NBA's biggest problems in terms of their ratings, because it's pretty bad to be an NBA investor right now as people aren't watching the games anymore, so that's something to keep an eye on. Then we're going to look at Kirk Cousins going to the bench in the NFL and how that not only shapes the NFC South playoff race, but the NFC and AFC playoff race as a whole. And then we're going to finish it off with the majority of today's show talking about the college football playoff predictions in all of the home games in this first quarter. I think it's the quarterfinals matchup. Let me double check that. No, it's just the first round, and then the winners play in the quarterfinals. So let's transition. Welcome in to today's show. Thank you for joining me. Currently up to 4 viewers on this first. I just texted some people to come and hang out. So let's dive into this a little bit. I'm trying something new. We're gonna make this, a reoccurring show here on All Jacked Up Sports, bringing some guests and whatnot. So, and I was trying to go live on TikTok, but you need 1,000 followers for that, and I have it on one account, but I don't have it on my sports account, and so that's a little unfortunate. But we move on. I'm literally having the stream also on my Steam Deck as a monitor, which is so funny because I get to see what it looks like on everything. And we're currently have a nice little studio, a little professionalism, and I'm literally live streaming off of that's my phone, which is just insane. As a little bit of a behind the scenes look at today's show. But let's dive into it. Let's stop wasting any more of our time. Let's get into the content as we are here for relatively the next hour. So if you don't like a segment, come back later because we'll be talking pretty much all major sports on right now. Obviously, hockey, and there's some free agency news in the MLB, and we'll get to that in a later show. But so far, these are our run times, and make sure you stay tuned for that bonus time because there are going to be some fun topics in there as well. But let's talk about this NBA Cup review. And obviously, if you've been living on a rock, the Milwaukee Bucks won the NBA Cup. They are the second annual winner of the tournament as they defeated the Oklahoma City Thunder relatively easy. Oklahoma City Thunder really struggled from three really throughout the entire game. But this goes into what works for the NBA. And I think the major thing in this one was it really boosts the non-casual viewer. And what I mean by that is if you don't really care about the NBA, you're not really going to care about this NBA Cup. But if you care about the NBA, then there's some stakes in it for you. And you see the players, they really start to care about the Cup. Like you see Giannis celebrating, you saw LeBron last year celebrating. And for some of these players, they're making 50% of their salary by winning this tournament. $500K is no joke. And even if you're Giannis and you're making, I don't even know how much he's making right now, but if you're guys like LeBron, who's making at least $50-60 million a year, $500K isn't necessarily going to, widen your eyes, but not only to get that free cash, but then a little bit of prestige as it goes on your resume in terms of legacy. That's something pretty cool. But I think, one, this is just a total... It's underwhelming as a whole, especially because not only is it early on in the season, but you're playing every Tuesday and Friday throughout the month of November. And I think it really gets overshadowed by the fact that Thanksgiving happens and no one's really caring about those Tuesday and Friday games. And so I think for the NBA, they really have to improve upon really the scheduling of the whole thing. If they were to make it 2 weeks, just make it like a full 2 weeks, I think that would create a lot more hype. Make it with three preliminary. Oh my God, I can't even pronounce it. But if you make it like 3 just round robin games, based off those 3, you get seeded and then you play a tournament. You really just do those round robin ones just for the hype of it all, because I don't think it necessarily should matter. Every team should be able to go on a little bit of a tournament run, because that's what makes it fun at the end of the day. And then you can also do the scheduling of the entire playoffs as a whole later on in the road. So let's take a look But the Milwaukee Bucks, I'll take a look at them and what this win means for them. Obviously, last year the finals were between the Lakers and the Pacers. The Pacers went on to, well, for them that was kind of a coming out party as they were able to make their presence felt in the East, especially in that lackluster East last season. They were able to get the 6th seed and play the Milwaukee Bucks in that first round, and they ended up defeating them in 6 games. But I think it's also interesting to note that the NBA champions are notable teams, right? You have a superstar in the Lakers with LeBron, you have a superstar with the Bucks and Giannis, and I think it's important to mark those players as these champions because then it gets the fans to care. But let's transition that into the NBA's biggest problem so far, and I think that is going to come down to the manner in which these games are played. And I think the biggest thing in these games is going to be how they really control the three-point shooting. That's going to be the debate. If you're to turn on Get Up, First Take, The Herd, whatever, you're going to look at all these shows. They're like, you got to somehow get rid of this three-point shot. And I think that's true, but I think they got to keep it in the game. I mean, even the corner three-point shot. So here's my little depiction on all of this. Here's how I would fix the NBA. I would say they need to expand the court, all sides. I think they need to extend the width of it a little bit, and the length can stay the same. But why I say widen it is then you can extend the three-point mark and you keep the corner three. So you just make it even a little bit further. Because if you were to widen it now by keeping the court the same size, then you're restricted to have really tight corners. And if you want that incentive, sure. But I think you need a little bit more space in there just for fluidity of the game. And I think you got to keep the corner three due to that fluidity. Because you always see people kicking out to the corner. They're not necessarily taking the three, or they're driving in the paint, and then they're coming out the other side. And so I think you got to just expand the court as a whole and then move out the three-point shot from there. And then you got to maybe make that incremental change, because not only do you keep the corner three, because that's huge not only in the NBA, but in college and pickup in high school, whatnot. The corner three is going to be a huge shot, because if you get rid of the corner three, then you gotta have to kind of get rid of it in the three-point, contest, and then that's a whole debacle. But this also kind of relates to the WNBA's problem, in which people are like, lower the rims so the girls can dunk and it'll be more exciting. You get more viewers, and to that I would have to disagree, due to the basis of you also have to think how it impacts younger girls and the fan base. Because most of the time, if you were to say, are you an NBA fan? Okay, yes. Do you play basketball? Would you go out if you had a hoop and shoot hoops? Yes, I would. I would think that correlation is probably the highest in all sports. Right? Baseball fans aren't necessarily going out and throwing the ball or, going to the batting cages every day. Football players aren't necessarily going out and playing, tackle football or even flag football or throwing the pigskin, right? But basketball players, you can go shoot hoops by yourself. You can go shoot with a friend. And so you're not going to lower the rims in WNBA, because that also affects, college women's basketball, high school women's basketball, and so on and so forth. And then that's kind of demeaning towards the women. And so for the NBA, obviously you're not going to raise the rim or lower the rim, because I think obviously 10 feet, that's not even a discussion in the NBA. But I think what the discussion is moving out that three-point mark all the way around. Because right now the shortest shot and the shot that every team would love to take is a corner three-pointer. It is the shortest shot to get the most amount of points, and they're going to do that every time. And so if you can maybe make it like a perfect half circle or something, obviously you have the straight line, and then it goes out into that little bit of an arc. I think if you can limit that, then it becomes something more advantageous for teams to not take those three-pointers and really start to attack the rim more and take more mid-range shots. So I think that's the biggest thing for the NBA to really take a look at is, can we expand the court? Would that be something feasible? And you're like, well, but if you expand the court, then you got to expand these other courts. Not necessarily, right? And Pee Wee football, really not until middle school football did I think we didn't play on 100-yard fields. We were playing on like 80-yard fields or something like that. I could be wrong, but I think if you were to expand the court, well, hey, it's the major leagues now, right? They play 90-foot bases in MLB. They don't do that anywhere else. And so changing the size of the court, I think, is something that the NBA could be advantage of. Oh, now you're playing on a bigger court, right? Now you have something else to deal with. Not only, more athletic dudes, you get a bigger court to deal with. And I think that is something that could be very, very interesting. I don't think adding a 4-point shot is the key. I don't think getting rid of the corner shot is the key at all. I think the real key is just expanding the court and then seeing where it goes from there. If they're still taking those long 3-pointers, then you have, I think, really a psychological problem in the NBA rather than a physical court problem that the NBA can control. It's almost like if NFL players were to ram their helmets into each other, like, okay, let's make that a penalty. They did, but they're still doing it, then you have a problem, right? Obviously, the NFL has cracked down on that due to the penalties and whatnot. You still have some controversies there, but I think it's also important to understand how the NBA can change its rules to favor types of play. We saw that with the 3-second rule in the paint. The defender can't be in the paint for 3 seconds or it's a violation. It's a technical free throw, and they keep the ball. And so that helps players go in and drive to the hoop, and it's easier to score. You see players like Luka Doncic, these European players, say it's easier to score in the NBA than it is EuroLeague because EuroLeague not only has a goaltending rule that's not in the NBA, but they also don't have a 3-second rule. So the defenders can just, if you're a 7-footer, you can just stay in the paint with your hands up, and that makes it a way less egregious or more aggressive shot for point guards to especially take. But the NBA changed rules to accommodate for that, to make it more, more worth your while to drive into the paint and yam it on a 7-3. Like, everyone loves that. That's everyone's favorite highlight, is seeing someone get dunked on, right? And so I think for the NBA, they got to change it and make the paint, or just really the inside game, much more favorable and much more of a viable strategy, because you've seen the NBA now, these teams are down 20, 25 points, and next thing you know, they go on a 2-minute hot streak shooting from behind the arc. Then you got then you got a close game, and then you're like, well, they just shot their way into it. They didn't really earn it. They got lucky by getting hot. That's something a little bit difficult. We got a thing in the chat here. Bulls will win the ship in 2025. Can you even name 3 Bulls players? I doubt it. Anyways, so that'll do it for the NBA's biggest problem. Just expand the court size. Once you make it a bigger field, you could lose on some crowd space. Boo-hoo, those courtside seats, they can go a little bit. All right, not as advantageous. So let's dive into this Kirk Cousins benching. I think that is one of the biggest things in the NFL today is his benching. I think this is going to be one of the biggest storylines as we get closer to this end of this NFL season. Obviously, Atlanta's still in the playoff picture. I don't know if they're in the wild card, but obviously I think they're still one or two in the NFC South. And so for the Falcons, they decided to bench Kirk Cousins after his lackluster play in the last 5 games, as he has like 9 picks to 1 touchdown, something along those lines. And now they are going to go with their first-round pick, their top 10 pick, in Michael Penix out of Washington. The lefty quarterback was a very shocking pick, to say the least. As let's take a look at the stats for Kirk Cousins. He's on the season, at least. He's completing 67% of his passes, so not terrible. 3,500 yards. But then you look at that touchdown interception ratio. That's 18 to 16. Not very favorable for the Atlanta Falcons. Obviously, this offense, for me at least, if you saw my Twitter, make sure to follow my Twitter also at AJU Sports. I expected them to be one of the best offenses in the NFL, and I think they have really disappointed everybody. They've disappointed, all those Kyle Pitts lovers that drafted him in fantasy. They disappointed all of their, Drake London enthusiasts. And it's obviously under new head coaching, and they're figuring out stuff. To me, that was a really debauchery move for the Falcons in drafting Michael Penix, because this guy was a great talent, another pocket passer coming from college, and I think he could have been maybe one of the better college or rookie quarterbacks. But then you draft him, the Falcons draft him, and I don't hate the pick. I just hate the circumstance. If Kirk Cousins had 2 years left, if he was a year into his contract, I'm fine with it, right? It's an Aaron Rodgers, Jordan Love situation. But you just signed this quarterback to a 4-year deal coming off an Achilles injury, and now you got this rookie quarterback. And now you're at week 16, and now you have some problems with your starting quarterback. Drafting Michael Penix, you were almost, in signing Kirk Cousins, you were almost guaranteeing yourself, all right, we're not going to deal with lackluster quarterback play. And unfortunately, that's been the problem for the Falcons this year. And so one thing that the Falcons hope to do with Michael Penix is maybe get a little bit more, active in the run game in terms of Michael Penix running. As I try to take a look at his college stats, if I can, it doesn't look like I have them. But yeah, he'll replace him as the team's starting quarterback all the way through the rest of the season. As we take a look at the Falcons, the rest of their season, they play the Giants this week, which I think is huge. Right, that's a great game to have for your rookie quarterback. That'll be, when is the 29th? Are they in a bye week? No, sorry, no, I was looking at the wrong date. So they play on Sunday at 12. And so that's gonna be a game that I'm gonna watch. And then they followed up with at the Commanders on Sunday Night Football, which is very, very interesting. That's going to be a huge game, not only in playoff implications in the NFC wildcard race, but also a little rookie quarterback battle. And then they finish their year versus the Carolina Panthers in Atlanta. So it's a very favorable schedule for the Falcons to finish out their year. And obviously they were on a 4-game skid, losing to the Saints, Broncos, Chargers, Vikings. And then they finally beat the Raiders, but they only scored 15 points. And Kirk Cousins finally threw a touchdown pass to Drake London. But then that was about it. He really did not look, like the same quarterback that we saw really in week 5 for them when he threw over 500 yards, which was just insane. I was like, this worked out perfectly. I was relaxing. I was like, I'm a genius. I knew this was going to work right from the jump. I knew this was going to work. And next thing you know, it fails. And it failed pretty bad. Now, the unfortunate thing too is now you have an expensive quarterback, but you're playing a rookie quarterback. That's the pro of a rookie quarterback, right? You have that cheap contract. So that's a little bit unfortunate for the Falcons. But do I think they can make the playoffs? Well, if I can, let me take a look at the playoff race currently in the wild card. I know the Bucs are getting hot at the right moment. Mike Evans is back. They have a game against the Cowboys this Sunday night, and so that's going to be, a very telling game. If the Cowboys can play spoiler, then the Falcons have a road into the playoffs. But let's take a look. Currently, you have Detroit. You have the division leaders: Detroit, Philly, Tampa Bay, and Los Angeles, the Rams. And then the wild card race, you have the Vikings that clinched. Then you have the Packers and the Commanders currently. And just out of that, you have the Seahawks, followed by the Falcons. And so the Falcons are tough. Are in a tough spot because Seattle's one of those teams that I feel like they can win any game, but then they can lose any game. And so if we look at the Seahawks final stretch this season, they play Minnesota. Luckily, that one is in Seattle. Then they have 2 road games to end off the year in Chicago and in LA against the Rams. That's not an easy stretch for the Seahawks. I could see them losing that Bears game especially. And so that opens the road for Atlanta to climb up there. They definitely need some help by the Cowboys and the Eagles to defeat the Commanders. Obviously, the Commanders play the Eagles this week, which is a tough one. And then they play the Cowboys in Week 18. And so do I think this Falcons team can make the playoffs? Well, if they handle their business, if Michael Penix is a better version of Kirk Cousins, then yes, I think they can. And I unfortunately think for them, they're going to be one of those stereotypical 7 seeds in which they lose in the first round. And so that is a very, very interesting interesting dilemma for the Atlanta Falcons. But let's dive into the creme de la creme. Let's stop wasting any more time. D. Rose, Michael Jordan, and the tall guy with long hair. You don't even know what the tall guy is. I don't even know who you're talking about with the tall guy with long hair. But let's dive into it. It is now time for this college football prediction. So it's going to take the majority of today's show. And so let's dive a little bit into it as let's take a look at the overall playoff picture here on the screen here. We got our first round matchups, Tennessee going on the road to Columbus to play the Ohio State Buckeyes. Then we have the Clemson Tigers going on the road to DTR to play the Texas Longhorns. Then we have Indiana playing in Indiana, in the same state, as they play the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. And then you have the SMU Mustangs going on the road to the Northeast to play the Penn State Nittany Lions. So I think this one is a pretty interesting one. Jump scare. So let's take a look at this bracket as a whole, and I want to start with, you know, this first game, this one over here, this one. You can't even see my hand point to it, but it's over there. The Hoosiers versus the Fighting Irish. Let's do a little P&R here and take a look at this bracket as I try to figure this out. All right, there we go. So let's start with that first game, which is on tonight here in a couple of hours. Actually, here it kicks off in a little less than 2.5 hours. So for this one, it's a very interesting one. Let's actually go to the preview screen because I feel like that would give us a lot here. So for Indiana, they are currently a 7-point dog in this one, as you can see here. And so I think for Indiana, look, they've really dominated their opponents this year. Outside of that Ohio State game, they've dominated their schedule. So, their first road test, they kind of dropped the ball. And then you look at a team like Notre Dame. They got that first win this season against A&M in College Station. And A&M turned out to be a pretty decent squad this year, and so that was a great win. But then you follow that up with a horrific loss against the NIU Huskies, Northern Illinois. That was one of the greatest upsets I think we've ever seen, and I don't think that was talked enough this season. And for them to be awarded a home game for that is a little shocking, especially with the road or how easy their conference was. I mean, Indiana finished, third in the Big Ten. Obviously, they didn't make the conference championship game, but they were a game out of it. If Penn State lost this past week, or the last week of the season, there was some hope for Indiana to make that bowl game or for that championship game. But this one, I think I haven't watched too much Notre Dame actually outside of their games. Their defense really clutched up against USC in that last one with back-to-back pick sixes, which was just insane to say the least. I mean, just insane. As I'm trying to catch up live. All right, here we go. I like this view. It's a nice little view. So, let's take a look. Obviously, you have a 30% chance to win this game. And so for Indiana, they are going probably for the biggest win in program history. As we take a look, both these teams are coming in with different emotions, I would say. I think Notre Dame is feeling very confident, right? The winner of this one has to go and play Georgia in whatever bowl game in the Sugar Bowl. So they got a road to New Orleans on the line in this one. And this one is the first college football playoff game of this 12-team format. And so I think the biggest thing is going to be, can Curtis Rourke continue his stellar play? 27 touchdowns to 4 interceptions. He has seemed really like the difference maker in this team. Leonard for Notre Dame, as you see here, he 2,000 yards, 16 touchdown passes to 5 interceptions. Nothing crazy. You look at the run game. I mean, Love for Notre Dame's insane. Almost 1,000 yards rushing, 15 touchdowns off of 139 carries. That's just insane. Let's dive a little bit deeper into his resume. He's averaging 7.1 yards per carry. I don't think you can see that because my big head's in the way, but 7.1 yards per carry. That is just insane. This dude's a stud. If Indiana can't stop the run, they're in trouble. We saw in plays in that Indiana-Ohio State game, Indiana let up a lot of big plays, and some of them were due to their own error. We saw Indiana, that the muffed punt that they had, not even the punter I'm talking about, the punter dropped the ball on the snap. If that happened to me, I would be pissed. I would be so mad. But for Indiana, they got to clean up those mistakes. I think they've really shown this year that they haven't made those mistakes. And this one's going to be a close one. This one's going to be fought in the trenches. And you see a guy like Jeremiah Love. He is going to be the catalyst for this Notre Dame offense. If he has a quiet day, Notre Dame is in trouble. If he has a loud day, they got a matchup with Georgia on the way. For Indiana, I mean, just look at these scores. I mean, 47-10, 66 this year. Now, Purdue's terrible, but I think for them, they really got to make it count in the red zone. We saw their first drive against Ohio State. Beautiful first drive. I think it was around 12 plays, 75 yards. Was caught a little bit in dangerous spot there in the red zone, but they were able to get out of it and score. And so for them, I think they're going to make the red zone chances count and protect the ball. And so what's my prediction for this one? Well, I think Indiana is a great story. I think that is. I think it is. Now, this one being played in Notre Dame at their stadium, Notre Dame has high expectations. A lot of teams are really, picking Notre Dame to not only win this one, but beat Georgia, I've seen. And so I'm going to have to go with the Fighting Irish in this one. And it's not a diss on Indiana at all. I think they've had a tremendous year. They're one of the great storylines this season. But unfortunately for them, I think you look at that Ohio State game, and we'll take a look at that right now, in matter of fact. Yes, 38-15. That was a complete debacle. Debacle, to say the least. Only 115 yards. That was a lot less than I thought. Will Howard had 101 passing yards. But you look at this. You look at their offense, wasn't really able to get 68 passing yards, 85 rushing yards. No, that's a, you know, they didn't really get their playmakers the ball. They didn't get Miles Prince the ball. They didn't get Elijah Scart. Scarrat? The ball. They didn't get their guys the ball. And I think for Indiana, they a little bit feast off those big plays. I think, their defense is a really capable defensive playmaking team or unit. And so I think Notre Dame is going to really control this one on the ground. I mean, we look at their toughest matchup this year, Notre Dame. And, it doesn't, no, it was right there. But let's take a look for them. I want to say the Indiana or the Texas A&M game, but I think that's such a reach. Let's look. I mean, they've dominated their opponents too. They're coming in here with much more momentum, I would say, and so that's why I'm picking them. But let's go to this Army game. Let's go to this ranked matchup game, top 20 ranked matchup, and let's look at the box score. I mean, 275 yards rushing as a team. That wasn't just Jeremiah Love. There was also Williams. Prince did some. Jadarian Smith, Riley Leonard, the quarterback. He ran for a little bit, and so that's against the 19-team Army. And Army is a really solid team. Obviously, they just lost the Army-Navy game, and they got a bowl game coming up. But Notre Dame improved to run the ball. Let's take a look at. I wish I could see their run log, but let's look at the USC game. USC had a very down year. They were luckily able to make a bowl game at a 6-6 record. But let's look at this box score: 258 rushing yards. It's not only Jeremiah Prince, Jadarian Prince, and Jeremiah Love. You have Riley Leonard, the quarterback, making some plays with his legs, and so I think that's a huge thing in this one. Is can Indiana stop the run? And I just don't think they have it in them. I think not only is the first quarter going to tell a story, but that third quarter. I think the third quarter in all four quarter sports, football and basketball, is the biggest quarter in the game. It's because you can say the first quarter is all about how you start. Well, that's true, right? You don't want to go down 21-0. But if a team comes out and scores on their first drive or really controls that third quarter, their likelihood of winning the game is exponentially higher. It is massively higher. And so, get Kirby Smart off my screen. And so, for this Indiana Hoosiers team, I think it's going to be massively important for them to stop the run, and they have to maintain that through the entire game. Because if they trail and they can't stop the run, you might as well count that one as over. And that game is over, bro. It is so done. So I'm excited to see it though. I kind of want to see Indiana win. They would be a very fun story. Obviously, Notre Dame has some political drama with them in making the bracket and having a home game with their one loss. But if I were to tell you to bet some money, I would tell you to bet it on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Score prediction for that one? Actually, let me jot this down so I remember for this weekend as I get out the trusty black book. Hashtag black book. Let me write this down for this first one. Let's go IU versus ND. Final score, we'll go, I want to say it's relatively low scoring. I'll go 24-14. Notre Dame wins, and they move on to the Sugar Bowl to play the Georgia Bulldogs. So let's hop into this next one. So, let's go with Penn State hosting the SMU ACC runners-up. SMU has been one of these teams that has snuck their way into this bracket, and they deserve their spot. They've handled their schedule, and they lost they almost won the ACC championship game, and so I think unfortunately they have the worst matchup in round one. Especially where they have to play. They have to go to Pennsylvania to Beaver Stadium to play this Nittany Lions team, in which they've looked good. They've looked really good, but I think not in this game, but in a future game, you'll see the Penn State of old. You'll see the same Penn State in which they have a great regular season, but they can't beat the True Bloods. They can't beat the reoccurring teams that always come to bite them. The Ohio States, the Michigans, the True Blue Bloods. But they have the most favorable schedule in this entire college football bracket. I mean, we can go back really quickly as you see my screen. They play SMU first, down there. Then they have, if they win, they play Boise State. Boise State's a group of 4 team. Now, again, they're dangerous, but it's a group of 4 team. And then you win that one, and then you play the winner of those 3, Indiana, Notre Dame, and Georgia. I mean, if you take the average of all 4 of these branches, I mean, the Penn State one's probably the worst, but the second worst one is the Indiana one. And so, and I'm not dogging any of those teams, but just the average. I mean, you have Oregon, Ohio State, Tennessee. That one's pretty difficult. You have Arizona State, Clemson, Texas. That one's scary if you're, Clemson or Arizona State. You have to play Texas. Texas was like the top-ranked team the entire season. And so, as we take a look at that. But let's take a look at this. It's Penn State SMU game. Penn State is a 9-point favorite in this one. And it'll be the first game on tomorrow, matter of fact. And so this one's like a little appetizer. I think that's a great way to categorize this one. It is an appetizer. And so I think Penn State, I was listening to the radio in which they were talking about this game's going to be cold. It's going to be a cold, cold game. And I think obviously that favors Penn State. And so as I'm writing them down, I'm not going to spend too much time on this one just because I feel like it's very written. I'll go 35-20. Penn State wins. And I don't think it's relatively close. I think if Penn State can't pass the ball, they're screwed because they don't have a run game. They have a zero relevance of a run game. And so if they continue to struggle, or if they struggle in this game throwing the ball, it's tough. I think I would probably, other than Texas, I think this one is probably the most likely one to be a blowout, in my opinion. But we'll leave it at that. We'll go with Penn State moving on to play Boise State in the Fiesta Bowl. Now let's go into maybe the most exciting first round matchup. Number 9 Tennessee goes on the road to play the number 8 Ohio State Buckeyes in Ohio. I was going to say Columbus. There we go. Columbus. Duh. And so this one, I think Tennessee's been one of those teams to not get a lot of coverage this year. They finished 3rd in the SEC. I mean, they're the last SEC team to make it into this playoff. 10-2 overall record, 6-2 in the SEC. They beat teams like Alabama, right? But they also lost to teams like a Georgia. And so, they have these quality wins, but they also have these quality losses. And so I think they're almost more battle-tested than in Ohio State, in which Ohio State's biggest game was truly Oregon. Now, if you want to consider Indiana there, go ahead. I think Indiana's a great team. But you saw the mismatch that game was. So they haven't really experienced a close game in which they really had success in, other than that Oregon game earlier in week 3, I think that was. And so for Tennessee, I think they have a real chance to come out and really counter the negative momentum Ohio State has. That the game loss for them against Michigan, they lost the game. That is a stake in every single one of those players, every single one of those coaches, and every single one of those fans. All of them. Every single one of them is pissed and they feel bad about their football team. And now you have, luckily, a home game, which should be interesting, especially if they get down early, what that temperature of that stadium is going to be in terms of the fans' attitudes. But they give an opportunity to kind of redeem yourself. Obviously, the winner of this one sets themselves up with a matchup with Oregon. Right, I'm right on that. Yes, the winner of this one will play Oregon in the Rose Bowl. So they got a trip to the Rose Bowl on the line. And so for the Tennessee Volunteers, right, they have a young quarterback. We can take a look at him, Nico. I'll just call him Nico. I mean, I'll show you his name. But let's look at the loss at Georgia. for instance. Let's take a look at this box score. Obviously, I'm nitpicking a loss here. Yeah, like look at that last name. You want me to say this? Nico Imamaleva. Imamaleva. Anyways, we've seen him miss deep passes the entire season. We saw it against Bama, and they were still able to win. And so he's had moments like this in which he has, resemblance of a freshman quarterback. I mean, he's a freshman for Pete's sake, and he's playing against this Ohio State team. And so he's had up and down 19 touchdown passes to 5 interceptions. Carson Beck apparently is not going to play in this one. Or, sorry, not Carson Beck. No, I was looking at Georgia. But he's not going to play, apparently, in the next round. But for this team, which quarterback you're taking, Nico or Will Howard? You probably take the veteran Will Howard. He's shown this season to make plays in, shootouts and close games. Obviously, the Michigan game didn't go their way, and I still think that's a bigger story than it's letting on. But I think Tennessee and Ohio State is probably going to be the best matchup here in the first round. This one's a night game. It's the last game of the night. Oof, this one's a tough one. This one is a tough one, folks. I'm going to have to go as I write this down, so I have it in writing so I can check. Tennessee versus OSU. I think I might have my first road team win in this one. I'm going to go Tennessee 24, Ohio State 21. This one's going to be an all-time classic game. Let me mark that I know who I have winning. Yeah, I mean, this one's going to be a really tight defensive game. In my opinion, defenses are going to make a play. I think Tennessee could have a couple of long plays that benefit them, and I think Ohio State's going to have some of those blunders, defensively that we've seen. And so I'm gonna take the Tennessee Volunteers to upset the Ohio State Buckeyes in round 1. So let's take a look at our updated bracket, and we'll take Tennessee. And now for this one, I don't even really want to get into it. I don't believe in Clemson that much. I think they're, unfortunately, a really fraudulent team offensively, and their defense hasn't really shown me much. I think Texas really dominates this one. I don't think it's frankly close. I'm going to take Texas. Like 45. Look at a field goal. 45 to 21. 45 to 21, Texas wins. They punch their ticket to the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. And so, yeah, that's the round 1 predictions. The show hasn't necessarily been in now. Let me see how long we've been streaming for. 41 minutes, and I feel like I've been yapping forever, man. So let me hear you guys' thoughts in the chats on my round 1 predictions. If you're still tuning in, let me hear your thoughts. I really wish I had water. My throat's dry. Let me hear y'all's thoughts in the comments below. Let me get some. We're gonna take a break here. Let me get some music up in here. Hopefully that music's not too loud. I'll have to go back and listen to this at the 42-minute mark. See how the music's kicking in. Hopefully it's like nice and chill. You know what? Let me look up some. Let me look up some cool beats. Not this dubstep. No, I don't want. All right, let me look up chill beats. There we go. Hopefully it'll play. Perfect. All right, now we're chilling. We're chilling here on You Don't Know Jack. You don't know Jack because you think you know college football like I do. I don't think this is the thing to say here after I just gave my picks, but I'll say it. I think college football. No, that's not true. And if you were to tell me what 3 sports do you know the most about, I would say NFL, MLB. I just lied. College football. I can't even think. NFL, NBA, college football. It's probably the one I know the least about. Um, Obviously, you look at the NIL space, that's changing up and down, and we've lost all our viewers. No, we got a viewer back. Let me know your guys' thoughts. I'll recap myself as I go. I want to keep track. I did go Notre Dame to beat Indiana tonight. Then I followed that up with SMU losing to Penn State. Then I had Tennessee beating Ohio State. And then I had Texas destroying Clemson. I think, my thoughts on the first round, or this college football format. The crazy thing is I wish I had access to my middle school email, because I made a presentation on this whole thing about how the playoffs need to expand. And this was after TCU got snubbed in the first year of the playoff. Once that happened, I was like, they need to expand. And they need to expand almost immediately. And so, let me zoom in here. I know what it's doing. Let me unlock. I'm still figuring stuff here out on the first. Oh, there we go. Just a little bit of zoom. And so I made a presentation, and I literally showed. I was like, dude, you could make all of the bowl games into it. You're gonna make way more money off it being college football playoff. You can advertise it for a couple of weeks. I mean, the crazy thing is we can take a look at the schedule of the whole thing, in the matter of which, the games start on December 20th and 1st. The second round doesn't start till the normal Final Four would have started. The final semifinals, which is crazy. And I think that's a huge thing for college football, is because now they have all these opportunities to keep marketing and making a lot more money. And so I think it's something very cool. As we're nearing the 45-minute mark on this live stream, if you've tuned in at all, I want to thank you guys for joining. Obviously, I'm going to try to market this. I recorded a TikTok during this, which is crazy. I can record like that, which is insane. But I think the college football playoff is solid right now. I think the teams that deserve to be in made it in. And people are making arguments about this non-conference schedule. If you're talking to a team like Bama, well, Bama lost its conference games, right? And so you're like, well, why schedule tough opponents out of conference? And I can kind of see that argument, right? I can see that argument in which you shouldn't schedule hard opponents. But then what does that show your team? Especially when like in the Big 12, for instance, the Big 12 is never going to get respect. It just won't. The Big 12 and the ACC won't get respect, like the Big 10 and the SEC. They just won't, right? Rankings and whatnot. And so if you schedule these ranked non-conference games, that just gives your boost to your schedule. And if you can't win those games, do you really I think teams really think they deserve it rather than you have to earn it. We see teams this year, like a Penn State, they handled their business. They handled their schedule. They had one loss the entire year. They handled their business. They lost an extra game, and so they made it over a Bama team that lost 3 games, 2 of which reasonable. The Tennessee game, tough matchup in Knoxville. Then they lost to Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt was a scary team, but that's a bad loss, but it's like a reasonable loss. Oh, I can do that here? As we had random balloons pop up. I don't think it's going to work. Anyways, and then you have that horrible loss against an Oklahoma team. I still can't believe they lost that game. Oklahoma was terrible this year. Terrible. And they somehow still won. And they somehow lost to them. They didn't deserve to make it. You know who did deserve to make it? South Carolina deserved to make it over them. South Carolina, even though Bama beat them, South Carolina was one of the scariest teams in college football. And so I'm not going to waste too much time on this stream just to extend time. The bonus time is more playoff predictions. I just wanted to kind of finish my, whole bracket here real quick before the games start. So let's start. Georgia, Notre Dame. I think Georgia handles the Fighting Irish in the second round. if Carson Beck plays, if he doesn't, I still think Georgia handles them in this one. Is my SEC bias coming out a little bit? Maybe. And then I think Penn State goes and upsets Penn State. I think Penn State will be favored in this one, which is crazy. I would love to see Austin Genty and the Broncos win this one. They've always had great Fiesta Bowl moments. The Boise State University has, and so I think that would be awesome if they were to win. And then you have a Tennessee-Oregon game, which is hugely awesome. I just think this one's going to be a great one, but I'll take Oregon in this one. I think Oregon will prevail in that second half. It'll be close at halftime. Actually, that's one thing I didn't even know is Tennessee has really lackluster first halves this year. That might come against Ohio State. We'll see tomorrow. And then I'll take Texas to defeat Arizona State. This one will be closer than people think. I think Arizona State is really good of a team. I just don't think they have the defense to overcome Texas's defense, if that makes sense. Like, Texas's defense is going to probably shut down Arizona State's offense. But I don't think Arizona State has that offense. And then finally finishing it off, in the semifinals, you have number 5 Texas against number 1 Oregon. And this one comes down to quarterback play, in my opinion. Why is it getting louder? What's happening here? What's happening with my audio? Blame this video. What is this video? Non-copyright, chill, jazzy, lo-fi, hip-hop, royalty-free, jazz, hip-hop music. Thanks. Anyways. I think it comes down to quarterback play, and I'm going to take Dylan Gabriel in this one. And that sets him up with the Penn State-Georgia, or sets him against a semifinal between Penn State and Georgia. And I think here's where Penn State, kind of comes up short in this Orange Bowl Fiesta Bowl. And that sets up an Oregon, a 1v2, Oregon versus Georgia. And I'm going to take the quarterback play in Oregon. I don't love picking the first seed, right? It's the March Madness rule. You never really want to have a number 1 seed winning the entire bracket. But I don't think they have the worst schedule. If they were to get snake bit at all in their run, it probably would be against the Texas in that semifinal, if that were to happen. I think the one thing I think I'm not accounting for is Ohio State and their refocusness this season. And so I gotta watch. Let me mute this as we get down to the nitty gritty. I think we gotta really watch this Ohio State team. If they win in really solid fashion against Tennessee, then Oregon's in trouble. Oregon is 1,000% in trouble. And watch out for that. The teams I don't think really have a chance to win the whole thing. Unfortunately, Indiana, I don't think they have a chance. I don't think SMU has a chance, and I don't think Arizona State has a chance, or Clemson. That's 4. Yeah, Clemson, SMU, Indiana. That's 3. And Boise State. Those 4 teams, I don't unfortunately think they have a chance to win it all. Doesn't mean they can't get there. I just don't think they're going to win it all. And so, with that, the show might be coming to a close. Let me play more of that music. That music was jazzy, my man. But that'll do it for the first episode of You Don't Know Jack. Like I said, I'm gonna try to have a lot more guests on the show, make it more interactive. We're gonna get hopefully I can grind here a little bit on the TikTok, get that TikTok live because people love to interact on that app before it gets potentially shut down. So, thank you all for joining. This has been a wonderful time. It's tough to talk for an hour straight into a camera by yourself. I mean, nobody's here. And so thank you guys. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. Make sure to follow the Twitter. The Twitter is when I will tweet out when I'm going live and stuff. I do have an Instagram. Don't really post in there that much. But All Jacked Up Sports on the Instagram. And so, from my heart, thank you for joining me on this wonderful Friday evening. If you're staying in tonight, make sure to tune in to that Indiana-Notre Dame game. I'm excited to watch it. Anyways, that'll do it for me, guys. Peace.